Hi, friends, and thanks for listening to The Fashionista Life, brought to you by True Fashionistas, where you can sell, shop, and look fabulous. I'm your host, Jennifer Johnson, and today we welcome back into the studio Sue Zumstein with Quest. Welcome back in.
Thanks, Jen. Great to be here.
Great to have you. So, Quest, for all of our listeners who may not know, is Collier County's program that provides resources needed to send hardworking students to four-year colleges and universities. It's been a godsend to me and my family personally. So I thought that I needed to share with all of our listeners because it's invaluable information with kids who are juniors or seniors or even younger in high school to kind of prep themselves. So explain a little bit about Quest and how you got involved and how long it's been around.
So Quest has been around for 27 years, and I just had my 26th anniversary there.
Oh my gosh.
Starting out as a volunteer and now executive director of the program. And we are a nonprofit program here in Collier County. So it's interesting because we have all of our Quest students, but we also do all the college counseling for the Village School.
Okay.
And for Naples Classical Academy.
Wow.
So we're going to have over
and
5.
Huge shout out to the Village School. Woo!
Yes, exactly, because that's where Jen's kids are. I know. And that's where our offices are located now, too. So it's been pretty great. We're going to have over 500 students next year, which is exciting, a little overwhelming right now. But I'm sure once school starts, we'll all take a breath and dig in, and it's going to be a fun year.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
I will say that, the past 2 years, 3 years since COVID hit, that there has just been tremendous change in college admissions. So I'm glad that you're giving me this opportunity to kind of help parents navigate the waters, because I feel like they're a little bit choppier than ever right now.
And it's confusing as a parent anyway, because you don't really remember what your parents went through when you were just starting out on this college visit. And then let's face it, the landscape looked a lot different. I know for me, when I was that age, it looked a lot different than it does now. And a lot of us have so many questions, and we just, we can go on the internet for the answers, but it might not be, you're going down a rabbit hole there. So I'm glad to get it right from you, to know exactly the information that our parents need to know. And I know there's so much we could talk about. So we're going to have you back in on another podcast. But
that's fine.
So let's talk about the kids are rounding home plate here, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're a junior or senior in high school. Where do we start? Because like I said, it can be overwhelming. And if we don't have a roadmap to follow, we don't know what our destination is.
Oh, I agree. I like I said, things have changed a lot in the past 3 years. I think the amount of professional development that I've done with colleges in the past 3 years has been extraordinary. And I'm still learning all the changes since COVID hit. So I can only imagine for parents how they feel about this right now. But, I think one classic mistake that I see parents thinking about at the beginning of the junior year going into this process is, my child needs to have this resume that they just need to be this well-rounded student. And I would just love to get rid of the word well-rounded in our educational discussions whenever it comes to college and building resumes. I am the crazy person who will take a week of my summer vacation and drag my poor husband with me, and let's go visit colleges for a week that I haven't been to yet in the United States. So I was at Princeton a few years ago, and obviously we're talking rare air here, but they did say something that really has stayed with me ever since, in that they said, here at Princeton, we don't want to see a well-rounded student. Parents need to approach this process from how Princeton was explaining it, because every college is not only looking for qualified students academically, but they're trying to shape a class. What do they want this incoming class of August 2022 to look like? Parents need to understand that. Students need to understand that perception. So when it came to resumes, Princeton said, we don't want well-rounded. We want lopsided. We want
that's interesting.
Well, yeah. We want kids that have been passionate about a few key things in their life and have done them in depth. And when we accept a bunch of lopsided students, we'll have our well-rounded student body at Princeton as an incoming freshman class. And I thought, oh my gosh. And so I always ask college admissions officers about this, and they're like, yes, we want to see depth in a few key things. So parents, big piece of advice, don't send your child out to try to do every single thing under the sun.
And you know, and I never thought about it like that either. And as you're saying it, the light bulb went off in my head.
Mhm.
I get it because you would rather have somebody passionate about a few things,
Yes.
but go all in, not just dip your toe and be
Mhm.
on the fence about it, but that goes all in and knows everything that they possibly can immerse themselves in with that subject or that topic or that organization, whatever it may be.
100%. So if we think about the resume, in a sense, the freshman year should be broadest. The junior year should be narrowing it down so that the junior senior year, the student is down to the few key things that, oh, gee, I've been doing these now for 4 years. I'm passionate about these things. I've made a tremendous commitment. Perhaps I've had a leadership role within one of those few key things. Think depth, not breadth, whenever it comes to building the resume for
That's
college.
wonderful advice because I hear from a lot of parents, "Oh, my child has to be in this club, and this club, and they have to play all of these sports," and not so.
No, exactly the opposite. And so help your student figure out what they're passionate about.
Okay, that's great advice. What else can we do?
Okay.
What else do we need to be doing, to start this journey?
Well, within the public schools, certainly not with our independent and private schools, but within the public schools, I just encourage students and families to throw class rank out the window. Um, I will use my older son as an example. The highest he was ever ranked at Barron was 20th, was the day he graduated. He got into every school he attended.
Wow.
I'm not going to tell you the rock star school he went to school, but suffice to say it was pretty deep waters, which is extraordinary. He, class rank is one facet, but we all need to be cognizant of the fact that more than 50% of high schools in the United States no longer rank.
Oh,
This,
really?
yeah. And so if colleges are looking at, okay, we compare the student within the context of their high school. If their high school ranks, then
Mhm.
okay, they're going to see it. It's there. But at the end of the day, we all know there are certain kids who are taking classes not because they deeply care about them, but somehow they want their GPA to be
Right.
higher than everybody else's. Um, again, this is let's leave this parent ego trip
Mhm.
at the door and try to help our students have depth in their curriculum with what they're passionate about, not just taking extra classes online to boost. This also adds to the stress factor whenever students are applying to college because they think that if I can be better than 5 other kids at my school, I'm
Mhm.
going to get in. It's one facet, but it's very much down on the list now nationally as to what colleges are looking at in admissions.
So, when applying to colleges, do they still do letters of recommendation? Is that like a thing?
So, great question. Do you know that none of our state schools here in Florida will accept letters of recommendation anymore?
Wow.
Um, well,
What's the reasoning behind that? Because
oh,
anyone could write it for you?
well,
Or
no, it isn't that because they all get accepted. They all get submitted electronically. But if we think about Florida State last year, had more than 72,000 applications for 6,200
wow.
spots in the freshman class. As Florida State said to me a few years ago when we were in a meeting, they said at some point in time, all the letters start to sound remarkably the same. And
Right.
I can understand. I've written a lot in my time. I can understand that it's challenging to sound unique, and so it just private schools though whole different ball game. Most will require anywhere between 1 to 3 from teachers.
Okay.
Counselor ones are separate. But here's the other thing. Think about our public schools where perhaps a guidance counselor has a caseload of 600 students.
How would you even begin?
How would you begin? And how do you know that student? And I know that our local counselors do such a great job and they work so hard with such a heavy caseload. And I know they have surveys for kids to
Mhm.
fill out to get to know them better. But sometimes it's still very, very difficult for those counselors to be able to do that. You know, for me to do a good letter, it takes me 45 minutes to an hour because I don't use a standard form. I try to write one differently. If I had a caseload that heavy, those poor counselors, it's
Right.
overwhelming for them. It is.
Wow.
So the counselor ones still play into it too, along with teachers.
But they also do an essay. Do all schools require an essay?
That's a great question. So certain schools do and certain schools don't. But if a student's in Quest We're not going to take that chance. And everybody will write a college essay. So at some schools, they're optional. At most of them are not. But I think what's interesting is in this stream of, dialogue that we're having back and forth, students need to realize that their personal essay counts way more than what their resume does.
Oh,
Their personal essay, when colleges survey as to what's the most important thing to them in the process, do you know that the essay comes in as number 4?
wow.
Right behind rigor of curriculum, grades, test scores, and then the essay.
So craft a killer essay.
Sure. And here's the prompt. What do you want them to know about you that's not already on the application?
Good.
Now, there's a lot of breadth to that. I
Mhm.
understand that. But remember, it's a personal statement. A few key things. Don't write about what you want to do with the rest of your life. 70% of kids change their major. So try not to
Right.
go down that rabbit hole too far. And also, it can be tough to write about community service.
Mhm.
When a student does community service, they walk away feeling like, oh, I'm really happy I did something great. Or, thank goodness that isn't me that's homeless or
Mhm.
whatever the
Right.
situation was. It's kind of hard to spin that in too many original ways.
Right.
So make it personal. about
Something
you.
it's kind of like writing a book, right?
Mhm.
It more is taken into it if you're writing about something that is deeply personal to you, that is showing emotion and showing that passion.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, that's kind of what fuels you and boils it down to is your passion for something. So if you're
100%.
passionate about it, it's going to be pretty amazing.
And it will. And I just have to say, I always acknowledge to my students the trust and the honor that I feel that they have in the trust of allowing us to help them develop what they're going to write about and editing those essays and having those personal conversations so we can move through this process. And honestly, I just had to write an article for eBella magazine.
Oh,
And
yes.
I am just telling you, I get how hard it is to start with a blank page when you've got a lot at stake, like a college essay or the art. It was like, oh my goodness, I don't want to ignore that. Okay.
Right.
But yeah, that's one thing. Our kids do rock star essays.
Awesome. Those are awesome tips. With the kids headed back to school, you may have a little bit extra time on your hands. So why not clean out your closet and maybe even theirs? Hey, maybe even have time to redecorate your home a little bit. If you're wondering what to do with all that stuff that you've accumulated, well, bring it all to True Fashionistas, or you can even ship it to them for free. When you wear it, and that's actually where they're going to sell all of your unwanted items for you. They take away all the hassle by doing all the work, and all you have to do is collect your money. You can reach out to them online at truefashionistas.com. Come into the store or check them out on Facebook or Instagram, and that's truefashionistas.com. Hi, friends. We're back again with Sue Zumstein, and she is with Quest for Success, getting all of our kiddos ready to think about college. Hi, welcome back.
Hi, Jen. Great to be here.
So, we've talked a lot in depth about college and what to do when they're younger to get them set up for this. But now we're headed out to the schools to take a visit, right? Couple questions before we get into the questions to ask, I should say, would be number one, should they be checking out the schools before they actually apply? Or I've heard of some kids going, you know what, I'm just going to apply. If I get in, then I'll check it out.
Yeah, and everything changed with COVID. This is a big thing. This is certainly why so many colleges in the United States have seen increases in applications of 20, 30,000 students more than what they say they had 3 years ago, which obviously means that acceptance rates are just dropping. They're just plummeting because I know very few schools are increasing the size of their freshman class. So a big misstep that I see people take is this. There's 4,000 colleges in the United States. We're only trying to decide where are we going to apply right now, not where we're going to attend.
Right.
But nevertheless, for people to say to me, oh, well, so-and-so got in there 8 years ago or 5 years ago, I'm like, it doesn't count. Everything's
Mhm.
different. You can't compare yourself within that context. And so that to me has been I'm not sure heartbreaking conversations, but tough conversations with parents and students, because again, those students are comparing themselves perhaps to an older sibling who already attended that college, and it
Right.
makes it tough. A big misstep I see, honestly, is I'm going to apply to one backup school and 6 Ivy League schools.
Oh,
And I'm like,
sure.
where's our middle ground here? So I try to encourage students and parents as soon as possible to become consumers. When I look at the kids in our Quest sessions, I look at them and go, okay, a state school is 20,000 a year in Florida. A private school can be 80. All right. Let's say your parents were handing you that in a check every year and you could go buy a new car. You'd shop the heck out of it. We know you would, right?
Right.
Why aren't they doing that with their college
Mm-hmm.
experience? And too many times kids are, 8 home football games, I want to be in the stands. And I'm not minimizing the fun of college, but we consistently try to get kids to, let's look at the curriculum you're going to have to take within your major. Let's back up and look at those classes. Let's talk about the environment. Is it collaborative? Is it competitive? This school's average class size is 700 for freshmen. I'm not worried about what it is for seniors. Let's think about freshmen, right? So what is the average class size, and how will you adjust and exist in that versus a school that has an average class size for freshmen of 30 students? I want kids to get into the weeds, and the sooner I can encourage the students to own this process and not their parents own this process.
That's so hard, Sue. I'm telling you.
I know.
Because the parents are all like, I want my child to go to this school or a safe school or a small school. Then all of a sudden that's rubbing off on them, and that becomes what they have in their head.
100%. I think sometimes also students ricochet from thinking, I know everybody in my senior class and I want to go someplace where I don't know everybody. Well, you can still have that experience at a school that has 2,000 students at it. I'm going to use Davidson College as a great example. I once had 6 students at Davidson College. They only have 2,000 students on that campus. And I would, chat with my kids that are there during the year. And have you seen so-and-so or so-and-so this semester? No.
Oh, wow.
I haven't.
I would not think of it like that.
Think of it this way. They're going to have a group of students that they're living with. They're going to have a group of students that we may be taking the same classes. I'm going to have a group of students I do extracurriculars with. I may have a group of students that we're in the dining hall at the same time because of our schedule. It isn't the same as in high school where you've been taking the same classes with the same cohort of students for 4 years. It isn't that way in college.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I know that some students probably have in their head, well, I'm going to go to school with my best friend. And it's going to be like we're in high school, but we're living on our own, going to college. Not really.
No, not really at all. Come on. I mean, I think colleges do a pretty good job of matching kids academically. But I think the bigger question is with the study skills and the work ethic and the time management and the self-discipline. I cringe with I want to go to school with my best friend, or I want to go where my boyfriend or girlfriend's going.
Oh, yes.
That one really, I'm like, no.
Chalk on, the chalkboard.
100%. I'm like, no.
Yes.
Don't want to be doing that either.
So we're going to visit these schools.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a set of questions, things that we should be asking that, we're parents or the students, we don't know exactly what to ask? What should we be asking?
So what we've done at Quest, and we do this with the juniors I usually do this with them the end of January, beginning of February, before they set off to visit colleges, say over spring break if they're junior year. And I actually have 4 pages of questions that I put together. And I break it out into general information, academic, social life, dorm life, things like that. But the important thing is I just don't hand this to the students and say, okay, go have at it. I take 2 hours and I go over all the questions with them. And I specifically have them marked down. Do you ask this of a student who's doing the tour, or do you ask this of the admissions officer who's doing your information?
Because you could get 2 different answers.
Well, yeah. And one's going to have a better answer than what the other one is. And so again, I'm trying to get them to become consumers. I did this with my kids, and I'm just telling you, it is not a cheap date flying around
Oh, I know.
to visit colleges and staying in hotels and renting cars, and it's time consuming. And then we all take off from work. I will
It
say,
sounds fun.
well, it's a joyous time with your child. Let's just put it that way. It can be. But I also remember being the mom who was at the front of the line asking all these questions. My son kept drifting further and like, I don't know
That's
this
great.
woman, is why is she asking all these questions? But you want the kids to be up front on the tour. You don't want them in the back.
Right.
All right. And we don't want them choosing their dorm because they liked how the school had it decorated from Target.
That's so funny because I hear a lot of, well, I heard that their food there is so good, or I get to have my own dorm room, or there's only 2 of us and they're really nicely decorated.
I know. So we'll apply there and I'll live there with my best friend from high school, right? I'm like, no, let's
Sure.
make our choices based on other things. Step out of our comfort zone a little.
So we're asking all of these questions, and is there somebody at these colleges that you can go to afterwards to ask these questions if you don't get or you don't want to be the one taking up all the time as asking all of these questions?
No, 100%. So here's a big mistake sometimes I think parents make too, is they just set up tours. And when you look on a college website under admissions, there will be tours and there will be information sessions. Each one takes about an hour. So I usually tell parents to plan on being on a college campus between 2.5 and 3 hours, because you want the info session because it's done by admissions personnel, by admissions officers who read applications. Will give you a good idea as to what they're looking at whenever they read applications. Then whenever you do the tour, it's with the student. And get into the weeds. They always have a tendency to say on college tours, well, here's the average class size. As a parent, I was the one going, I want to know what your average freshman class, tell me the biggest class you ever had as a freshman. At UF, I have consistently had student tour guides look at me and go 1,000, 1,100. Wow. I don't need to know what senior year is going to look like. We need to get through the first year, the first 2 years. That's what we want to. So those are the questions that we have on here. I encourage students and parents. The tour guides have a script. Pull them off script so you can figure out what it is that you need to know. That's what's best for your child. And is this college or university a place where it's going to be a great fit for them? They're going to thrive for 4 years and come out then with a plan for the next part of their life.
Right.
Jen, I have to say, it's kind of hard because when we see college rankings, they usually don't have anything to do with what percentage of students have jobs coming out of college. As a parent, I invested in college because I wanted my sons to have a secure financial future. Instead, a lot of rankings are based on yield rates, and yield rates are, we accepted 10,000 students and 8,000 students actually enrolled.
Oh,
that's a college yield rate. How many of they accept actually enroll? They'll often be based on the SATs or ACTs of the students that applied, not the ones that were accepted. There are all these things that come in to make up the rankings. And I don't know, sometimes as a parent, I always thought to myself, well, how is this relevant to what I'm considering for my children?
Right.
So,
and you know what I think is interesting too? You visit these colleges and you ask your questions and all that, but nothing compares to how that your student feels when they walk on that campus.
Oh, I agree.
Because it's, nope, not for me, or, oh my gosh, I feel at home here. And that's what matters.
Oh, with my older son, I mean, we flew to Texas and visited a college, and we got done with the info session, and he looked at me and goes, we don't need to tour. I don't want to go here. I'm like, what? And the same thing, unfortunately, happened at a school in Boston. So here's a piece of advice that I learned the hard way. What we do at Quest now, especially over the past 15 years, we try to help students figure out what they don't want in a college, because at the end of the day, that's what my son was saying to me after we had already flown to these places. He hated city schools. And so coincidentally, the 2 schools where he said, I don't even want to look around, were both in the middle of 2 major cities. He ended up at a school that was a little more, a little less in a city. Let's just put it that way. I won't say where he went, but at the same time, all of a sudden, that's when the light bulb went on for me.
Mhm.
And so I am very cognizant now of trying to ask the students pointed questions to realize, where do you want to spend 4 years of your life, but where do you not see yourself? Because then we can narrow the list down very quickly.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
So, in closing today, do you have a little pearl of wisdom to share with our listeners?
Try to enjoy this ride. I felt as a parent that it was almost the time when you're in a rental car and you're driving from one town to the other and navigating these maps to try to get there. The conversations in the car were just extraordinary. Try to have them keep the earbuds out so that you
Mhm.
can have this one-on-one time to
Right.
talk. I would also encourage you, try not to drag the whole family
That's hard. I get
along.
it.
I know it
So,
is
yes.
hard, but when it's more just the two of you or two parents with that child as opposed to a bunch of
Mhm.
younger siblings, too many people start throwing opinions at the kids as to what they just experienced on that campus. I always tried to make it a plan that once we left a school and we got in the car and we started driving to the next place, I made sure I kept my mouth shut for at least 30 minutes.
Mhm.
I wanted my sons to be able to think about what had we just experienced, and I didn't want to throw my opinion in. I wanted to be able to sit back and listen
Mhm.
to their thoughts as to what they were feeling. And that was something that I should have learned with my older son, but I definitely learned with my younger son.
I love that, and I think our listeners will agree that that is great advice. So, Sue, if our guests want to get a hold of you, how do they do so?
Okay. They can email me at sue@questforsuccess.com, or they can call me at 239-825-9809.
Wonderful. And I will make sure that we drop in the show notes the questions. It will have a PDF of questions that you
Mhm.
should ask at your college visit. We'll make sure that we get that in the show notes so that you have something to download and something to actually be able to take with you on your college visit. So thank you again, Sue, for coming in. It was very,
Thanks.
very informative. And thanks to our friends for tuning in to the Fashionista Life. I'm Jennifer Johnson. And the Fashionista Life was brought to you by True Fashionistas. Make your day fabulous.